Stream.
Live and on the stream. Thank you so much, Ralph. I'm Rima Ilebo, MD. I am the medical director of the Natural Solutions Foundation. I have been told I am live. This is a good thing because the options and alternatives are not good. We'll be talking about someone who encountered those options and alternatives for a very political and purposeful reason and chose to make some very important choices when we talk with our guest in a little bit. In the meantime, I want those of you who are listening and may not know that our principal website is Dr. Rima Truth Reports. That's DRRIMA truthreports.com. If you don't, Ralph, your chair is
Making
once
noise
again
again. Yep.
making noise. Yes, it's a member of the cast. I want you to know that that's a site that you need to bookmark and you need to go back to frequently. We put up posts, we put up blogs, we put up very important information, specials, new videos. That's drrimatruthreports.com. Truth is a hard commodity to lay your hands on, but it's vital to your freedom to be able to do so. Health freedom, after all, has three components. One, the untrammeled, unfettered flow of truthful information. Two, the legal right to make whatever decisions you choose to make about your body, or if you're a parent, about your children's bodies. And three, absolute unfettered access to the things that you choose to use for your own health and health benefit. Those are the three concrete aspects of health freedom. Then, of course, there's freeing your mind. That's essential as well. Now, vaccines are coming toward us with deadly force. They're lethal weapons. I will say that again. Vaccines are lethal weapons, and they come toward us with the deadly force of the globalists who want us all to be vaccinated as much as they like, for as many reasons or non-reasons as they like. You have the right to a vaccine or other medical procedure exemption at your will, at your wish, if you assert it correctly. And therefore, you should go to the principal website of our Natural Solutions Foundation, drrimatruthreports.com, /advance vaccine directive. If you do not wish to receive vaccines or be forced to receive vaccines, then you need to assert your right to informed consent with a proper assertion. And that card, the Advanced Vaccine Directive card, gives you that right, that assertion. This is of enormous importance because you don't know what's in a vaccine. You don't know how many proteins from how many human fetal cells, usually aborted, or cancer cells, how many insect proteins, how many ovarian proteins, how many viral proteins, how many this, how many that, how much foreign DNA, how many stealth cancers are riding in that virus. You don't know how many infertility or cancer-causing ingredients have been intentionally added. You don't know how many immune cancers are riding in suddenly there is echo. You don't know how many autoimmune disease producing adjuvants and toxins have been intentionally added, because every time the pharmaceutical industry makes you sick and you use a drug, you're increasing the profits of their vaccine. And you're also shortening your own life span and helping the depopulationists, who are the pharmaceutical people, get rid of you. Therefore, putting a vaccine into your body is worse than Russian roulette. In Russian roulette, you have some empty chambers. In a vaccine injection, you have no empty chambers. They're all full and they're all poisonous. I will repeat one more time what I've said before, which is that by injecting toxins, pus and poison, into the body, you are bypassing the three immune systems that have developed to protect us from precisely that, from pus and from poison. You are bypassing the skin, you are bypassing the lungs, and you are bypassing the gut. So injection is literally lethal injection. There are no good vaccines. There are no good reasons to take vaccines. If you want to do something for your immune system, take nano silver 10 parts per million. And that's available under my name, Dr. Rima recommends, at nsfmarketplace.com. NSF stands for Natural Solutions Foundation. nsfmarketplace.com. And while you're there, check out the CBD, the cannabidiol, that your body makes, but you probably need more of, especially if you've been vaccinated. It's a miracle molecule, and you need it if you want to gain health or regain health. Also available at NSF Marketplace. This is your health and your freedom. And the FDA and the World Health Organization and the CDC and Health and Human Services and all the rest of these agencies don't want you to know this information and don't want you to have the freedom. And that's why we fight for health freedom. So you do know it, so you can exercise it. Ralph, tell us a little about the health freedom news of the week, including Zika.
Oh, we must talk about Zika, for sure. But we'll save that to last.
Okay.
I'd like to let our audience know that Gary Null, and we, of course, are good friends and allies. Gary sent us an article entitled Medicine That Kills. It's a powerful and important article, and with his permission, we have posted it and our sister organization website, the Institute for Health Research. That's inhere.org, INHERE, inhere.org. It's part of the Inhere Journal. You'll see some familiar names in the journal, Dr. Rima, myself, some other people we all know. And we think this is an important article that you ought to take a look at, folks. That's number one. Number two, the Inhere website has on it information about the Natural Remedy Freedom Action. Natural Solutions sponsoring a petition drive to garner help from Congress to protect our natural remedies from FDA health tyranny. You can get a lot more information and watch a video about that at the Inhere website. And that website is, if I can show that to you all, here we go. That's the Inhere website, and it has just what you're looking for in that regard. And where does that lead us? It leads us finally to Zika. And I guess to deal with Zika, we probably should go to the New Jersey media. Well, actually, Fox News. I know, Fox News. All right. We quoted it in Dr. Rima's blog, so it must be true. Fox News says there was a tiny head, that is a microcephalic baby born in hospital in Hackensack, second such child in the United States, again claiming that the mother was in Honduras and was bit by the deadly mosquito, and the result was that she ended up with a malformed child. What they aren't talking about is what vaccine schedule they had her on before the injury to the fetus occurred. So that's one of the big stories, and it takes us to Zika, the new fear, the new device to get us all to accept whatever is in any given hypodermic syringe. So that's the health news.
If people would like the truth, the update, the reality on Zika, I am within hours of finishing a new ebook on Zika. Yay. And you can, Ralph, you could put the cover picture up perhaps so that people can see it.
Do I have that's our little pyramid image. Oh yes, I have that right here.
Now,
There you go,
the
folks.
truth about Zika is that the CDC is lying. Whoa, what a surprise. The CDC lying about disease, about vaccines, about health. Amazing. The CDC has been forced to admit that the Zika virus is a self-limiting virus that causes no particularly serious disease, that 4 out of 5 people who are infected with the Zika virus don't know they have it because they don't get any symptoms. Almost nobody goes to the hospital with the Zika virus and nobody dies from it. Then the 20% of people who do get some sort of symptom, it's mild and self-limiting, and everybody who gets it, whether they develop symptoms or not, is immune for life. So it's a self-immunizing trivial disease. And it has never, in the 69 years that it's been tracked and followed and known and registered, it has never caused a birth defect. On the other hand, the vaccines that pregnant mothers are being given, as in the vaccine mandate in Brazil, which all of the women who delivered babies with small heads were forced to take before week 22 of their pregnancy, those vaccines are known in laboratory studies to cause premature closure or fusion of the bones of the skull. Well, if a baby's bones fuse, then the baby is going to have a small head. Duh. Now, the chemicals that the World Health Organization encouraged Brazil to spray directly on their water supply to supposedly kill mosquitoes, that too can cause microcephaly, according to laboratory results. A lot of things can cause microcephaly. There was a study that came out recently that said Guillain-Barré syndrome, which is the new name for polio, is linked to the Zika virus. Somebody got Guillain-Barré syndrome, and they think that it was related to the Zika virus. As a matter of fact, 34 people in Brazil got Guillain-Barré syndrome, and they think it was linked to the Zika virus. So you might ask, oh, did these people have positive blood tests for Zika virus? No. Did they have positive spinal fluid tests for Zika virus? No. Was there any shred of evidence that they had contracted the Zika virus?
They were in Brazil.
What?
They were in Brazil.
They were in Brazil.
And there are mosquitoes in Brazil.
And there are mosquitoes in Brazil, and there are journalists in Brazil.
Right.
So there you go. So it was concluded on the basis of this tiny sample and the speculation of the CDC that these people developed Guillain-Barré syndrome from Zika virus. Now, that's not science. That's not even good voodoo. That's just what comes out of the rear end of a cow, which passes for news. Oh, the rear end of a bull, actually.
Right.
I mean, we're talking about the veriest stupidity. And if you're fluoridated enough, you'll accept that. That's what's passing for this scare that we're all supposed to be so worried about. Now, people who tell this kind of truth are not looked upon with favor by the establishment. Oh, by the way, if you want my new Zika book, go to Dr Rima truthreports.com and donate $7.97 or more. More is good. And we'll send you a pre-publication copy of the new ebook. So that's $7.97 for the pre-publication copy. Next week, it will be 20% more. So you're supposed to be stupid. You're supposed to be passive. And if you know something that doesn't fit in with the official dialogue, you're supposed to be silent. And that brings us to our guest, who is a jewel of a human being, Doug Diamond. Doug, welcome to the Dr. Rima Truth Reports.
Thank you, Dr. Rima, for having me on. Thank you, Ralph. How are you guys?
Good.
Good.
Well, Doug, I had the privilege of being with you, along with Ralph, on Lost Arts Radio, another show that you're intimately associated with Richard Sachs, a wonderful show, by the way. And we talked about how you were and how you were doing, how you were recuperating from your accident.
Mm-hmm.
Accident? Oh, accidents are things that happen without planning, without purpose, without meaning, right? They just sort of occur. Otherwise, they're not accidents, right?
Right.
So maybe you didn't have an accident. Maybe you had an incident. And maybe you'd like to tell us about that.
That's a great way to put it. Yeah, for those who don't know, I'm the producer and engineer for Lost Arts Radio with Richard Sachs. And we regularly have Dr. Rima and Ralph and General Burt on our show, luckily. And they always bring us so much knowledge and wisdom. We love having them on. Yeah, so what happened? Let me start with the result of the accident, and that was April 11th, so just a few weeks back. I was involved in a car accident, first one really of my entire life, and I was just on my way to pick up my daughter from school like I do every day. And we were driving home from school, and probably about 5 or 6 miles from our house. And we were in some traffic. The road was a little bit wet. It had been raining. It's kind of hilly through this area. It's near a golf course. And out of nowhere, a pickup truck with a trailer behind it, like a landscaping type trailer, so an open trailer with equipment, came barreling over a hill and slammed on their brakes and basically slammed into us because they crossed the center line. So he crossed the center line and essentially went out of his way to hit me. And he smashed into my Jeep. It was myself and my 8-year-old daughter in the Jeep. And like I said, we were on our way home. And the impact was so great that I'm not really sure exactly what hit us, whether it was the pickup truck or the trailer. I've heard reports that it was the truck itself. And I do know that the driver of the truck was relatively unscathed. He did not have any major injuries. So the impact was such that it hit us and jammed the dashboard and engine essentially into me, being on the driver's side, and spun us around. And then we smashed into another concrete post, which was kind of like a warning stoplight kind of thing. It wasn't really a stoplight, but it was a light telling you that there's a hill and to slow down, which obviously he ignored. So what happened was I had multiple injuries, and thank God my 8-year-old daughter essentially had 0 injuries except for a small seatbelt bruise. She was wearing her seatbelt. She was sitting in her spot that she normally sits in our vehicle, and she was okay. She was shaken up, and she did black out, but she was okay from a health standpoint because they had to take her to the emergency room and check her out like they would normally do anyway. My injuries were far more extensive. I had the main injury I had was that my left leg was pushed far too high up, and it popped the ball and socket out of place. It basically broke the ball off and jammed it through the socket. And so that was my main injury, but I also had several other injuries. I had an orbital fracture in my head and a concussion from the impact of the, I guess probably the windshield and the airbag. And then I also had some cracked ribs and a fracture in my knee, and then also a fracture in my C7, which is a vertebrae. So they had to do multiple surgeries on me. The first one, of course, was the hip. They had to do some repair on that, obviously, to go in and fix the ball and socket. And then the next day they did the C7 surgery, which covered the vertebrae issue that I was having. So extensive injuries. I was not aware of any of it. I remember a few things that happened earlier that day, and then basically woke up. This was on a Monday. I woke up Wednesday and essentially skipped over all of it because I didn't remember any of it. Nothing that happened in any of that was anything that I remembered. My daughter, who was awake through most of it, remembered bits and pieces. And we also had our little dog with us who had enough extensive injuries that we had to put her to sleep.
Oh.
And of everything, that was, to me and to my daughter, truly the most heart-wrenching part of all of it, because she was like a member of the family. But we did have to put our dog to sleep, which was terrible. But from the standpoint of the injuries, luckily I had a lot of really great doctors around me in the trauma ward at the hospital where they took me, and they did not perform anything that was unnecessary. They made sure that they kept my existing hip. They didn't try to put in an artificial hip. They worked with what I had. They didn't try to sneak in any vaccines. They did what they were supposed to do, and I got from the trauma ward to a room within a few days, and then from there to the rehab hospital a few days after that. And all total, I was in there until the 27th of April. So I was in there from the 11th when it happened till the 27th. And then I went home, and I've been in recuperation mode being home ever since. And luckily, I'm doing fine. I'm getting around okay. I actually had a doctor appointment today and got my leg brace off. I'm still not able to put weight on my left side, so I'm still recuperating. Obviously, I'm not 100% yet, but I'll get there, and I know I'll get there because I'm trying to do the right things. I'm taking natural supplements. I'm doing my exercises that they tell me to do, and then eventually I'll be doing more physical therapy than I'm doing now. But the strangest thing of all of it was, remember, this happened on April 11th.
Well,
Exactly.
Now, let me interrupt you because I want to set this up for our audience. This is of enormous importance. Now, we all have moments of knowing, intuition, feelings of dread, feelings of excitement that are not rational at the moment, but might then later make sense. One of the things that we're taught in our culture is to ignore those things, that knowing is worthless. Only knowledge is worthwhile. And that's a very good way to control people, to tell them that their inner knowledge is not worth anything. But just suppose that the technology existed to have people know exactly what you wanted them to know, or not know what you didn't want them to know. Suppose that the technology existed to actually insert thoughts, beliefs, or the drive for behavior into various people. What a wonderful weapon for domination that would be. Why do I say this when Doug has very generously shared with us the reality of a horrific and potentially life-threatening, certainly life-altering accident? Well, you have to know something about Doug. You have to know that he just won't shut up. You have to know that Doug is a truth teller and has been a truth teller for a very long time, speaking his own truth, whether or not it's convenient. And perhaps in the same file drawer as the dead doctors, although he is still happily a live director as opposed to a dead one. Now, with that said, I want you to listen very, very seriously and very attentively to what Doug is going to share with you, because it's not random, it's not imaginary, and it's not trivial. It literally has implications for your life. Doug? I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I thought it was important for people to have that that framework.
I think
No,
we ought to add one
that's
more
fine.
thing, Doug, to this, and that is that,
Yeah.
of course, you are a journalist as a director of the station, and I think that in many ways what we're seeing is an attack on the independent information source that internet radio shows to us, and
Yeah.
that's why it's so important. All right, go ahead.
Yeah, I hadn't actually thought of that, but that's very true. And with what Dr. Rima was saying about not shutting up and about putting the truth out there, I do that pretty much constantly every single day. I'm on Facebook and on Scene and some other websites, and I put out information from Alex Jones. I'm a big fan of his. I think that everything he talks about is right on the money. So I put out a lot of his articles. I put out things from you all, actually, from your site. I put out Vaccine Truth. I put out truth about chemtrails and geoengineering. I'm actually the webmaster for Dane Wigington for his website, geoengineeringwatch.org. And so I do I work with him directly, and I know a lot about that whole issue. So I'm constantly putting out information and get some pretty good response in general from people that are listening or watching or whatever, whether they message me or whether they do it publicly. I do have quite a bit of response. And so I feel like I'm making a difference, or at least I'm trying to. So what happened was the accident, again, was on April 11th. And exactly 1 month earlier, on March 11th, and I know it was March 11th because when it happened, I told some friends about it in a Facebook message, which timestamps it. So what happened exactly a month before the accident was very interesting to me, and that was that I had a very vivid, very real dream that I woke up from, because I remember being afraid, at least afraid on some level, that it might be true. And so on sometime in the early morning hours of March 11th, I dreamt that someone was typing to me, and that I was hearing, not the typing, but I was hearing a voice tell me what they were typing. So it was like someone was emailing me by typing, but it was audible in my head, and I could hear what this person was saying. I could almost visualize them sitting at a desk doing it. And
I have to interrupt you for a second.
yeah,
When Ralph and I worked together over the internet, one of us or the other of us will be typing and saying out loud what we're typing in order to have a dialogue with the other person and correct if they don't think it's a good thing to say. So we frequently talk and type what we are talking. It's a very common thing to do. And you were experiencing it in this dream as if someone were talking and typing the same thing. Yeah? Do I understand that correctly? Okay.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I'm an audio engineer, so I would say that what I was hearing was not an open microphone, because I couldn't hear this person typing. I couldn't hear the clicking of the keys. All I could hear was their voice, whether it was that person's voice or just another male voice in my head. I know it was a male. He said to me very clearly that I had to stop what I was doing, or else something bad would happen. And I know that's what he meant. He didn't say something bad would happen, but I know that's what he meant. I inferred it from the way he said it to me. Basically, stop doing what you're doing, or else. So I didn't stop what I was doing. I kept on doing what I normally do each day.
Did you know clearly what he meant? That he didn't mean stop putting your socks on the way you do, or stop parking where you park. He meant stop telling the truth that you're telling.
Yeah, I knew instantly what he meant. And
so you're saying basically that it's more than the words that you were hearing.
Mm-hmm.
You conveyed more than the words themselves. and the implication that you had from the totality of what was sent to you was that you were being threatened.
Yeah. And the reason I know it is because the next thing that happened in the dream was that I asked him how he was able to communicate with me like this. And he just sort of laughed and said, well, you already know how I can do this. And by that, he meant that from what we breathe in, from the air, from the disbursements, from chemtrails, geoengineering, from whatever, whether it's GMOs in food or somehow fluoride in the water or whatever it might be, it's these things that add up to be able to communicate directly into someone's head. That's what I inferred from what he told me. Now,
Have
he
we
didn't have
all
to
been
explain it.
nanochipped already? Have we all been nanochipped already?
I believe we have, at least to some degree, through what we're breathing primarily. I didn't really ask a lot of questions. I didn't go into a lot of detail. I just sort of understood what he meant. And so, the next thing that happened really was that I woke up and I remember thinking, wow, this is really crazy. And I don't generally have dreams that are super vivid and very real. Usually my dreams are totally whacked out. Like I'll have dreams that don't really make any sense versus something that's really sterile and matter of fact like this dream was. That's why it scared me, because it was not my normal type of dream. So
you're only using the word dream because that's how you've interpreted what happened to you.
Yeah.
All right. I mean, we're not talking about, you don't know whether you were in REM sleep at the time. You may have been in some quite different mental category.
Yeah, I don't really know. But I do know that when I woke up, I was awake for a few minutes. I kind of calmed back down, went back to sleep, and the dream continued, which is really strange for it to pick back up where it left off. And where it continued was it became more of a personal threat against my daughter. And not even in specifics, but just that kind of like, you really have to stop what you're doing. We're going to come get you, whatever it is. And I don't really remember as many specifics about the second half as I do the first half of the dream.
Now, let me stop you. You have more than one child, and this seemed to be focused specifically on one of them.
Yeah, they focused on my daughter. They didn't mention my son, who's older than my daughter. And interestingly enough, in the accident a month later, it was only my daughter that was with me. My son wasn't even in the vehicle, but he normally would have been. And it was, to me, it was almost like, well, they knew he wouldn't be. I don't know. I'm just interpreting that. But yeah, he was not in the vehicle with me. He was not in the dream, but she was.
Do you have any speculation, any sense, any intuition? And this was not part of the dream. So this is looking for information beyond the dream or whatever that was. Do you have any sense about why your daughter would have been specifically mentioned? Are you especially close to her? Is she uniquely connected with you in a way that your son is not?
I don't really know, other than she's the most vulnerable of the two, because my son is older than she is, and he's bigger than me. And not to say he couldn't be hurt. Of course he could, but she's the more vulnerable. And for our dog to also be, not in the dream, but also to be involved in the accident, I think that's interesting too, because you have another vulnerable life form, in the vehicle. So, yeah.
Now, folks, we're reaching here for information or intuition or supposition, as opposed to the actual events of this non-conscious or out of the ordinary reality, for a very simple reason. I'm a psychiatrist. I'm curious to know what the threads are that connect these things. So I'm pushing Doug for information that he did not directly perceive. Mm-hmm. Is that okay with you, Doug?
Oh, yeah, that's fine. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, and I would also just add to that I felt from the first second the dream started that the person that was communicating with me by typing, where I was hearing his voice in my head, was a member of either the government or the military industrial complex or whatever you want to call it, in some super secret agency somewhere. That's my instant first feeling about it. And I should have asked him his name. You know, it was like that real. I probably could have gotten a name. But
could I have your employee number, please?
yeah, exactly. That's what I should have did. But yeah, it was very vivid. I've never had a dream like that. People have asked me if I've had follow-up dreams since, and I have not. I would add too. Go ahead.
Okay. Was it what we call a waking dream, a lucid dream? In other words, were you aware that you were dreaming during the dream?
No, it felt more like a communication. I wasn't really aware it was a dream.
We should not. Yeah, it wasn't lucid, and you're only saying it was a dream because you happened to be in bed, right?
I was in bed, yeah, and it was early in the morning.
Mm-hmm. And now we know a lot of people make claims that their minds are being invaded with information. And Dr. Rima began this whole discussion by suggesting that such technologies may very well exist.
No, they do exist.
Yeah.
All right, exist.
Yep.
Yeah, so, and I would just add too that with the people that are at this level, not necessarily people like the person communicating with me, but people above them, numerology is so important to people like that. Doing things on certain dates with certain numbers are important. And for the dream to happen on the 11th and the accident to happen on the 11th spoke to me because 11 is a number that generally means chaos, disorder, and judgment. Just kind of like 13 means different things to different people. It means rebellion or whatever. But 11 has a significant meaning, like 9/11 or other dates like that are important. So I felt that was really interesting.
Or 3/11, for example,
was an anniversary, one of the anniversaries of Fukushima.
Right.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
An intentional event.
Yeah, and I felt that was important too. Now, at the time, I don't remember waking up from the dream and deciding, now I know exactly what date it's going to be. There was no dates in the dream. Like I had the dream and then I woke up from it, and I thought about it really hard for a day or two, but there was never specifics as far as what's going to happen, who it was going to happen to, and what day it was going to happen. So I was in the dark from that standpoint. So it could have been at any point, at any time, or it could have been never. And I leaned toward never just because I felt like it was more of a hollow threat, even though I knew they could do something if they wanted, versus something that would actually happen. And for the man that hit me, I don't know. He could have been under some sort of influence, some sort of energy. I don't really know. I mean, or it could have been, like we talked about before, a total accident, which I personally don't believe it was at this point.
Did you have any contact with him? Did he come to the hospital and say, geez, I'm really sorry, man? Anything?
No, nothing.
Okay.
I don't even know his name.
That's interesting. Could you find out?
I could find out, through our insurance company. I'm sure I could. Mm-hmm.
What, if I almost killed somebody, I imagine, I've never done that. It's an experience I have not yet lived through. But I would imagine if I almost killed somebody, I might go to their hospital room and say, I am so sorry. What can I do to help?
Yeah.
I don't know, but I think I might.
In a less litigious society, that would be a humane thing to do. In our current society, it might not be.
Maybe my lawyer would say, don't do that. That's true. I forgot that. Well, you're my lawyer, Ralph, so
don't do that.
But don't do that. Okay. But could you, in fact, contact this guy and say, I'm trying to piece this together for my own peace of mind. What do you remember?
I could probably contact him. I'm not sure how much good it would do, but I could probably get a phone number and attempt contact.
It sounds like the
Let me
vehicle
quick-
swerved over the line, almost as though
Yeah.
he didn't have control over it.
Let me
Yeah.
talk to my attorney. Ralph,
Yeah.
is there any reason why Doug wouldn't be able, in a proper way, to do that?
Well, the thing you do is get the police report. The other driver had to give a statement,
Right.
and it'll be a statement that happened within minutes of the event. And if he says, "I don't know what happened, my vehicle swerved," that's notable. You know, it'll be there. His current recollection is less important than what he said in the heat of the moment when he was in the state of shock and being in an accident. So I would say just get the police report. That's going to be more valid information than the guy's prevarications after the fact.
Yeah, and what I was told was, and I don't know if this is true because I was unconscious, but what I was told was that the road was slightly wet. I don't know how wet. There's a hill there because there's a golf course, and he was going up over the hill, and when he was coming down the hill, he was going too fast, and in order to avoid slamming into the car in front of him, he turned, and then then he turned straight into me. That's what I was told.
A rear end collision would have been much less damaging to anybody than a head on.
Yeah.
So I didn't mean to interrupt you. Please go ahead.
Yes.
Well, I mean, that's pretty much it. I mean, that was the extent of the dream. That's the one dream that I had. People have asked me if I've had follow-up dreams, and no, I have not. I don't know that I will. I kind of hope I don't.
Yes, indeed. So the dream was stop what you're doing. Stop telling your truth.
And I did not.
Did you do? You did not.
Yeah. I think we have to stop calling this a dream, frankly.
Yeah.
I don't think the experience, right?
The experience.
And Dr. Rima has had experience with experiencers. So
yes. Exactly. So the experience said, listen up, stop doing what you're doing. And you said, I did listen, I'm not stopping. Did you have a sense of foreboding?
I felt like they knew I wasn't going to stop, and I knew I wasn't going to stop. So I had a sense of things will continue on. So maybe this was a message in response to that. I don't know. But I do know that you can't let fear drive you to do something you know is not right. And that's certainly what I would have been doing at that point.
By the way, another possibility, Dr. Rima and Doug, is that instead of this being some sort of a technological communication, it was actually a premonition on your part that a month in the future there'd be an accident and you were placing some meaning on it, that you were under some sort of threat. So it might have been, an innocent premonition, as it were. Your subconscious trying to break through and say, hey, there's a wave coming from the future back to this point that says there's going to be an accident in exactly 1 month.
If the CDC can determine that people have Guillain-Barré syndrome because of a virus they've never tested and data that they totally lack,
right?
Which is the same thing that they've done with the alleged microcephaly pandemic or epidemic or outbreak. I too can speculate without fact, which is what I'm going to do now.
All right.
on the basis of my understanding and prejudice rather than on the basis of fact. I want to be very clear that I'm speculating here. My speculation, knowing a little bit about this kind of thing, knowing a little bit about the technology that's used to introduce thoughts, and knowing that the other side seems to be under a compulsion for whatever reason to announce what it's going to do before it does it, as in the World Trade Center cards years before the World Trade Center event, 9/11 event, and many, 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 many other parallels. It seems to me that rather than a personal intuition, which would perhaps have given Doug some choice, that this sounds to me more like exactly what Doug experienced it as. Somebody saying, listen up, I'm giving you fair warning. Yeah, maybe we know what you're going to do, which is not do what we want you to. Maybe we understand perfectly, but the rule book says I have to do this. So I'm doing it, and then afterwards we can kill you.
Yeah, that's a great point. Yeah, I mean, the only thing I would say to all of that is that if it was a premonition, it would have been a lot more fuzzy. It would have been a lot more abstract, and I probably would have understood the message, whether or not there was a date involved. But this was more like a phone call versus something that was abstract. You know what I'm talking about? It was so matter of fact and so real that it's hard to relate it to anything other than just a communication, because that's what it seemed like.
Yeah, it's an experience. I think, yes.
Yeah.
I think the only reason you called it a dream was because you happened to be in bed when the technology was used. And I tend to agree with Dr. Rima's speculation. I think we have an example of a technology being used.
I think so, too. And I would also add that being part of Lost Arts Radio, we've had some really great guests on who have talked about Wi-Fi and the dangers of Wi-Fi and cell phones and how they can be used. People like Barry Trower and others. And I don't have a cell phone. I got rid of my cell phone in May of last year. So I'm a year without having any cell phone. So I have no constant ping that is trying to get from my cell phone to the nearest cell tower. So I don't have one, but my wife does. And that phone was in the room with us that night, and that could have been some sort of, there could have been an involvement with that or not. I was not really led in any direction as far as the cell phone goes during the experience, but I was told or understood that it was mostly from what I've breathed in. It was mostly from what we're all breathing in, and that's the chemtrails and geoengineering. And how and the other thing I would add to that is that I remember during this experience and where I'm explaining that, okay, I understand that it's from chemtrails and geoengineering. And I remember this person jumping in and saying, yes, and we have your DNA too, and we can track you everywhere you go. And I understood that meant also from the chemtrails and geoengineering. I forgot that part of the story earlier, but I'm remembering that now. He told me, or I understood, that it was DNA, that it was my DNA, that they have it, and that they can track me no matter where I go, whether I have a cell phone or not.
So tell me, from what you know about geoengineering, for you are closely associated with the wonderful Dane Wigington. Please give him our love.
Absolutely.
And
I will.
think about him and admire him all the time. So from what you know about geoengineering and smart dust and all that happy stuff, how do you understand that awareness? What does it mean to have your DNA? What does it mean to breathe in stuff and then be able to be communicated with? What do you know about that?
Well, I have a lot of friends who are positive for Morgellons, so they're actively involved in different groups, and they will often say how connected it is to the chemtrail issue, and
they're right, by the way.
Yeah, absolutely. So I have that background as well. So, from a nano standpoint, a nano is what, a billionth of a meter or whatever. It's very, very small. And if we're breathing that in, whatever that tiny little fragment is, whether it's aluminum or some other chemical or some sort of nanotechnology, we don't know. So we don't know how our bodies are going to react to it. We don't know if it's rejected it, using our immune system, or if maybe instead of our bodies rejecting the nanotechnology, perhaps it accepted it and it brought it in and it is using it, versus a Morgellons person who's having active rejection all the time and it's coming through their skin.
Exactly.
Very interesting.
Hildegard Staninger is a remarkable scientist. You know her, Doug?
No, I don't.
Okay. You should. You should have her on Lost Arts Radio. I guarantee you.
Okay.
Dr. Staninger is a toxicologist who has studied many things, all of which make you uncomfortable when she tells you about them with such detail and elaborate proof. But one of the things that she studied is smart dust. Smart dust is released from wherever, chemtrails, whatever, and it is taken into the body, settles on the body, but also is taken into the body and is a transmitter and a receiver. And the implications for that are fairly horrifying, including precisely and exactly what you are describing. Precisely and exactly. Now, when Dr. Staninger has talked to us about smart dust, she always, in the days before the interview or the program, she sends us patents, and she sends us scientific articles, and she sends us references, which show that what she's saying is substantiated in law and in science. And that's what makes her so very, very upsetting, because I would dearly love to dismiss the horrible stuff she tells us as her crazy fantasy. I would really love to dismiss your experience, your incident, which was, we think, not an accident, as your crazy experience. Wouldn't that be nice? Doug?
Yeah, absolutely.
You just had pickles before you went to sleep. Or maybe you're pregnant. I don't know.
Yeah. There's got to be some reason I had that dream. Yeah. I know what you mean.
Now,
Some reason, nonsense.
Now, we've just about reached the halfway point in this episode of Dr. Rima Truth Reports, brought to you by drrimatruthreports.com, and with our host, Rima Labo, MD, our guest, Doug Diamond of Lost Arts Radio, co-host, yours truly, Ralph Fusatola, JD. We usually take a little bit of a break for a few moments as we reach the halfway point and tell people about good things. Go ahead, Dr. Rima.
I am going to peek around my desk because I had a bottle that I wanted to show you at this point in the show.
Ooh.
And I think somebody cleaned it up. Never.
Well, you can turn off. You want to turn your camera off for a moment or two. Doug and I will keep on talking. You know, we can do that.
Okay. Let me get to my camera and let me turn it off.
Tell us, Doug, a little more about Lost Arts Radio. And you know, our audience knows Richard Sachs. There's a number of his presentations on our YouTube channel. But tell us what's the purpose behind Lost Arts, and tell people about what you do, and they can see your URL right in front of them right now on the screen. So go ahead.
Yeah, so Lost Arts Radio, we actually have two websites. We have lostartsradio.com, and then we have the bigger picture overall is the Lost Arts Research Institute. And so that website is lostartsresearchinstitute.org, so .org. And Richard has it set up to where if people wanted to donate, it's totally tax deductible. So that was the main purpose of splitting it off and having two separate sites. But we started our first initial show in January of 2015, and we have had some amazing guests, including yourself and Dr. Rima and many, many others. We have reached about 70 shows total so far. And we also, about probably 2 months ago, I think it was in March, we started a secondary show on Saturday mornings that is a live call-in show that's sort of an addendum to our normal guest-based show.
What's your what's the time of day that you live broadcast the show?
The Saturday morning live show is on blogtalkradio.com/Lost Arts Radio.
Okay.
And that is at 11 a.m. Eastern, so 8 a.m. Pacific. So it's Saturday mornings. So we take calls. Richard answers those calls on the air and talks with those people about whatever questions they have about anything. So that's our Saturday morning show. We've been doing that for about 10 weeks, I think now.
Mm-hmm.
And our normal guest-based show is there. We don't take calls on that one because it's just the guests that we have. But that show is also on Blog Talk Radio, and it is Sunday nights at 9 Eastern. So we have 2 shows back-to-back, both days of the weekend.
Perfect.
I am, speaking of back-to-back, I am back. A bottle that I wanted to show you, which is a dark blue bottle that says Dr. Rima recommends, and it has me in a white coat holding out my hand saying, yes, you, come, let's do this together, let's be healthy. That bottle has been moved by one of the helpful pixies that live around my house, so I can't show it to you.
But those of you who see the live stream, see the image right in front of you.
Excellent. In a moment, because the bottle is not the death pyramid, I assure you. Now, when we talk about Morgellons, there it is. That's the Dr. Rima recommends bottle of silver, and in front of it is the CBD hemp oil with 1,500 milligrams of CBD. Amazing stuff. 1 dropper full gives you 50 milligrams. Now, people with cancer tend to need between 125 and 150 milligrams of of CBD per day, 150 milligrams of CBD per day to support the immune system so that it can do what it's supposed to do, which is get rid of the cancer. That would mean 3 droppers full of this wonderful, wonderful oil. But the thing that I wanted to talk about was the silver. The chemtrails are dropping God knows what, including Morgellons, shall we say, seeds on us. The plagues that are being genetically engineered and weaponized and released on us are coming at us hot and heavy. The resistant organisms, like the new one that was tracked in the United States, a resistant E. coli that is resistant to the final line of antibiotics and can spread very widely because E. coli is part of our GI system, and these things colonize all of us very quickly. These things go away with nanosilver. Nanosilver works in a way that is different from an antibiotic, and indeed the FDA will not allow us to say that it's an antibiotic because that would make it a drug, and it's an unapproved drug, and you don't even want to know. So we don't say that. We tell the truth. It supports your immune system. We don't talk about any of the scientific studies that might show that it in fact has an impact on organisms and parasites and so on. No, we wouldn't say that because the spineless, gutless, worthless Congress of the United States and its handmaiden, the Fraud and Death Administration, don't want us to say that. And surely we would never do anything they don't want us to do, right? Okay, so we're not saying that, but we are telling the truth and telling you that this is what your immune system needs when you are faced with ordinary problems and when you are faced with extraordinary ones. And where would you get it, you may ask? Well, if you look at the bottom of the live stream, Ralph has very cleverly put it there, www.nsfmarketplace.com. and this silver is there. Now, this is the best silver that I know. And silver is the best immune support for beating off infection. We can't say preventing, we can't say curing, we can't say mitigating, we can't say treating. Those are forbidden words. Wait, what about the First Amendment? Yeah, well, so we're not saying that. But if you want a healthy immune system that doesn't even need the hint of vaccines as if they worked, then you surely want this nano silver. www.nsfmarketplace.com. Somebody said, could you please tell us when the new book is scheduled to be out? Within days. And as soon as it comes out, the new Zika book, the price will go up to $9.97. Right now, it's $7.97. So any donation, Ralph, could you put the donation link there?
Yes,
Any
I can.
donation of $7.97 or more will get you a pre-publication copy of this wonderful book, and I think you'll enjoy it greatly. How many pages is it up to now, Ralph?
47, I think.
47, and I've been at it again last night and today. So it'll be about 50 pages, more or less. And it's got information that you absolutely need. Now, is there anything else that you would like to add to this little break, Ralph?
That's fine. Nope, I'm just putting the word donate here. There you go. All right.
Okay. One of our faithful live streamers here, Hound Jog, has written there's no chemtrailing in Hawaii. Is that true from what you know, Doug?
No chemtrailing in Hawaii. No, that's the first I've ever heard anybody say. I've heard quite the opposite, that it's in fact very bad there. So having not been there myself, I haven't seen it. I don't know, but I do know people that take photos and post them from all over the world, Hawaii included. I would say that perhaps he or she is not, either doesn't see it because he's not looking, or if he is, perhaps he's not recognizing what he's seeing, and that's the long white trails. And now that is one part of their system. In other words, if you don't see a long horizon to horizon trail, that doesn't mean you're not getting sprayed. So in other words, you could see the long trails, or it could just be that you see a plane going over with a really short, bright trail behind it. That is also geoengineering, because the plane's engine is uniformly a high bypass turbofan, and those type of engines are very efficient, and the last thing they do is put out a long contrail. So if you're seeing a jet fly over with a short, bright trail, that is geoengineering, just like the long horizon-to-horizon military-type tanker planes put out. So it's really two different programs. There's a civilian program where they're adding this mixture to the fuel, and the pilots don't know, and then you get the short, bright trails. And then there's the military aspect where you have tanker planes literally flying and creating these long horizon-to-horizon trails. So I would say just tune in to what you're seeing above your head. Your chances are you're getting sprayed, because all NATO countries are. Pretty much most of the world is at this point.
I live in Chile, and I see lots and lots and lots of intentional sky blurring. One of the things I frequently see is that after the day's filth has been laid down and has spread out, then the shape of the material is changed into rectangles, changed into rhomboids that interact with each other, diamonds lining up next to each other, changed into uniformly puffy, round bits of material, changed into undulating waves, one after another, that are equidistant from each other and go across the sky in a way that sky naturally uninterfered with skies do not do. what does that sound like? I know that you and Dane work very closely, and we want to have Dane on the show to talk more about this in depth. But what does that sound like to you?
Yeah, well, you're seeing it with the grid patterns. They do that so that it spreads uniformly, or at least as close as they can. So they'll do a pattern like that, and then if you watch it over a period of time, it just sort of all congeals together and spreads out. And then you do end up with the haze. So you could start out with a perfectly blue sky and then end up with a silvery gray or silvery white sky by the end of the day or by the end of the afternoon.
Exactly.
Yeah. So some of the other cloud formations and weird things that you'll see, a lot of that has to do with what they're spraying, but also with the microwaving that they use in the sky. Because they microwave the sky, whether it's through ionospheric heaters like HARP or NEXRAD radar or any other type of system that's capable of putting out frequencies. They can hit the clouds or hit these chemtrail clouds, I should call it, with microwave frequencies and then manipulate the cloud formations and, combine them or break them apart or make them drop the rain that they have, or, they could do a number of different things with that technology. So part of it is microwaving the sky. That's why you see these weird anomalies, because it's radio frequency.
We were in Atlanta, 6 or 7 years ago, driving to the airport, and from rural Georgia. And what we saw were very, very heavy streaks that were coalescing into the gray haze that you're talking about, the silvery gray haze. And then we saw cutouts. We saw hearts. We saw squares with sharp corners. We saw S's that also had sharp corners, although they had curvy edges. And they were being literally blasted out of the sky like somebody with an eraser going, okay, let's make a heart. And let's erase the inside too. Quite terrifying.
Yeah. It almost sounds like crop circles in the sky. It's like they could create crop circles with frequency. Frequency is so powerful. I don't think most people realize how powerful radio frequencies can be, and you can use it for a number of different things, but controlling the weather is certainly one of the things that they're doing with it. So it could be that's what you saw. I'm not really sure.
Now, controlling the weather is bad enough, but controlling the weather and dropping red cell fragments and viral pieces and synthetic DNA and smart dust, that's a new level of bad.
Yeah, no kidding. Yeah, Clifford Carnicom's done a lot of research on that. He's put a lot of really great information out there as far as what they're spraying, and I would definitely visit his website and just get the lowdown on his research. He's done some really great stuff.
Yeah, he's a good researcher. What makes you so special? What are you doing? What truth are you telling that is so special, so powerful, so important that you receive this kind of special attention? And I'm saying it lightly, but I'm absolutely serious about this.
And we say that in the context of several dozen holistic doctors who have met untimely deaths over the past year or so.
Yeah. Well, I'm no one special from the standpoint of who I am and where I came from, but my approach to truth-telling is that that's my one and only focus. That's all I do. I don't put out pictures of what I had for breakfast on Facebook. I only talk about tyranny and globalization, what the globalists are doing, and vaccine truth and GMOs and geoengineering. And I just hammer it and hammer it and hammer it. And that's all I do. So I would say that's probably, if there's a reason, that's probably why. From the volume standpoint, that's all I do. So to me, that would make the most sense. If there's a reason, that's probably it.
it makes an enormous amount of sense. Now, are there forces in your real life world, um, spouses, relatives, friends, who would urge you to stop doing this? Or do the people whom you have aggregated around you value you for what you are doing and say, yes, that's what you need to do? Or both?
Yeah, it's both. I have a number of Facebook friends that's kind of basically all they do too. So from that standpoint, we're in the same boat. As far as close family and friends, I think it probably leans more toward the not trying to get me to stop, but to the reality that we actually live in. They're trying to figure it out too. They're trying to figure out if what I'm saying is really true. We're in a world of hurt. We're in a lot of trouble. And I think that's a big part of it as far as my friends and my family. Not everybody, of course. I have people that are on both sides. I don't really have too many people arguing with what I put out. I have mostly people that either ignore it or they ask questions. So it's usually one or the other. Not really arguing, not telling me I'm wrong, because what I found out is no one has any time to do any research. And that's all I do. I research and I listen and I take in and I watch videos about everything. And I try and understand what's going on. And then I impart that information to other people. And they don't know what to think because they haven't spent the hours doing it. So I'm sure you can identify with that. So
you could say.
Yeah.
I have a very specific reason for having asked this question. People write to me and they say, I don't know what to do. I tell people the truth and they don't want to hear it. They don't want to talk to me anymore. They've stopped inviting me to the family gatherings. I'm not welcome to say anything. People don't want to be friends with me anymore because they don't like what I'm saying. And, there are many, many permutations and variations on this, but people expect the people around them to value what they say if they value the person who is trying to say it. And it's often so hurtful and so disappointing and so painful to the person who is trying to tell truth to people who are not willing to hear it. And I wondered if you could share some information about this from your experience.
Yeah, well, that's a very real and very common issue. I hear about it a lot myself. And I think most of it has to do with programming, because we're all programmed really from the day we're born to believe certain things or to not believe certain things about our government or those in charge or whatever it is. A lot of people are not going to believe that we're literally being sprayed like rodents or like insects. And I understand that, but there comes a time when your intellect should take over and you should be able to do a little bit of research and read a little bit, listen to a little bit of audio or watch a video or something and really understand what's actually happening in reality versus what you want to be happening or not happening. And I think that's where a lot of people get stuck. They perceive the world a certain way. That's the way it has to be. That's the way it is. So then they alienate people that are trying to tell them truth. And it's whatever the old saying is about good men and women are if they don't stand up to tyranny, all it takes is for good men and women to do nothing.
All that it takes, Edmund Burke, all that the triumph of evil requires is for good men and women to do nothing.
Thank you. Yes, that's it. So that is so true. And that is where I find most people to be, at least to some degree. And then, as far as trying to get over that hump or get through that, you just have to keep putting out the information and answer people's questions. you don't have to have all the answers. You don't have to have every little detail straight, but you do have to be able to point people to relevant, good resources so they can research it on their own if they're really interested. And many people are not, of course. They don't want to hear about it. They don't want to hear that vaccines don't work because they vaccinated their kids or they're, so I think that's
because
important.
They've got an autistic kid and they don't want to take the responsibility for not having paid attention to what they were told. That's a big one.
Absolutely. So giving them good resources to research is really important. And that's usually what I try and focus on too.
I want to ask you a really personal question. We've been comrades in arms and buddies for a number of years now.
Yeah.
Right? We're electronic friends. We've never met in person.
That's right.
But we do appreciate and admire and support each other. You, Ralph, and General Burt and Richard and I are closely appreciative of one another, closely associated and appreciative of one another. So on a personal basis, what went wrong? Here you were, a perfectly normal program subject, and suddenly, good boy gone bad.
Yeah. Well, I don't know that I was ever normal from that respect.
Well, that could be it, yeah.
Yeah, I grew up in a household where, yes, we were programmed. But my mom, to her credit, was always very suspicious of the government. And that was kind of passed down to me. Now, she never really even bothered to do the research. I just knew it instinctively that I shouldn't trust the government either. And I think it was inbred in me at a young age that I knew that something's not right. And when a friend of mine who was at my house, we were standing outside talking, and he said, "Oh, look up in the sky and see what they're doing today." And there were chemtrails all over the sky, just literally stripes and checkerboards and all kinds of stuff. And he tried to tell me then what was going on and tried to explain what it was. And I listened to him, but I didn't really necessarily believe him. And he told me to go in the house, pull up YouTube, and watch a film called "What in the World Are They Spraying?" So I did that, and that was a real game changer for me, was just seeing a documentary that was really well done based on a certain issue that I noticed. And I had watched a few other documentaries kind of leading up to that sort of fit into that same mold as well. So it started, the puzzle pieces started coming together little by little. But for me, as far as wanting to become an activist, the geoengineering issue for me was the first one that I really got hold of. And then when Richard and I started Lost Arts Radio, then I really started learning about other things like the medical industry, the medical cartel, and vaccines, and all these other things that I didn't really know about. I knew to suspect them, but I didn't really know the details. So I think that's really what's helped, is just being involved in all these different things and doing websites and being involved in putting together radio shows and things. That really is quite an eye-opener, and I would recommend it to anybody that has the technical ability or otherwise. Start your own radio show. Do your own research, whether it's on vaccines or GMOs or fluoride or whatever it is, and do a show. Put together a report about just that.
Almost anybody who has information that is important wants to get that information out. And so if you write to them and say, "Look, I'm doing an investigation, I'm doing a radio show, I'm doing a documentary, and I would like you to give me 15 minutes of your time or 30 minutes of your time so that I can record what you have to say and share it with other people." There are not very many people like us, truth tellers, who are going to say no. So you might be shy, and you might not have a lot of experience, and you might think, "Well, gosh, I'm just little. These are big people." But big people who have a big message want everyone to hear it. And if they're not willing to talk to you because you don't have a listenership of 700,000 people per broadcast, then what they're saying is probably not worth much anyway.
Yeah, that's a great point. It's like when Richard talks about doctors having the right uniforms, the right costumes, so therefore people automatically trust them, or whatever it is. As long as those people are, if the perception is that they're to be trusted, then they usually are trusted by vast amounts of people. And I just think that even if you're a total novice on any of these issues, you can do enough research to put together a little bit of a paper or a video or something to where people can understand it better. All you're trying to do is get them to look into it for themselves, not necessarily provide them with all the answers. So you kind of have to look at it from that standpoint.
Now, what I won't do, and this is a very good point that you make, Doug, what I won't do is if somebody writes to me and says, could you please tell me all about Codex Alimentarius? And they clearly are not interested in doing any work on their own. They just want to suck at what I have to say. Then I give them a few links and I pat them on their little electronic head and send them on their way and say, come back to me when you've done some research.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think a lot of times those people want to argue with you anyway, so you're probably better off just giving them less information.
Ralph, what turned you bad?
I may have been born bad. I'm not sure. Now, I was always curious, very curious about history, and I was a voracious reader back in the days, in the 1950s and 60s when people read, and I read a lot. And the more I read,
wait, weren't those things called books?
Yes,
isn't
books.
That the word?
Yes. They had these little sheets of paper, and there were symbols on them, and they weren't in hypertext, and they didn't have moving images.
Ah,
I think
how
it was
interesting.
history that left me with a perspective. And the more decades you get on you, the more the perspective grows, it seems.
And how did you decide which perspective? Because if you read history, there are many perspectives available. One perspective is the strong man is always right because he wrote the history. Another perspective is nobody is telling the truth. Another perspective is it's all too much for me. How did you sort your way through the possible perspectives?
Probably it was a random process of bouncing off pieces of information. We bounced along the way with an interest in politics and an interest in experiences and a lot of other things. And I think that what happens is you sort of get knocked from mirror to mirror until you finally find that there are no more mirrors to doubt.
And so you have to be willing, in this being knocked from mirror to mirror, you have to be willing to relinquish the previous answers that you have already adhered to. I think this is a process that I know that this is a process that we are taught not to value and taught to avoid, because you're supposed to know, you're supposed to be right, you're supposed to have a finished answer. And it should be the answer that you hear on Fox News or whatever. When people start, quote, going down the rabbit hole, as I think all of us can attest, when people start going down the rabbit hole, it gets weird out. It gets uncomfortable inside. And to me, probably the greatest signal that you can have that you're on the right track is that it is uncomfortable on the inside. What would you gentlemen say about that?
I think you're totally right. Yeah.
Yes, things get weirder. That's for sure.
Yeah.
And things stop making sense because you've taken the picture that was cohesively put together and pieces of it have dropped out. Pixels are now gone. And it's difficult. It's emotionally difficult. It's cognitively difficult. It's socially difficult because when you try to talk to other people who have their pixels nailed down, glued in, and spiked onto the picture,
Right.
nothing's going to move their pixels, and
Right.
it gets hard. So this is a lonely process until you find a community of people that you can resonate with. And part of
And
the process,
thanks to the internet, there are myriads of such communities.
exactly. And what I was going to say, and you're quite right, is that part of the process of exploration and waking up and becoming conscious is realizing that a community may have shortcomings. You may still like it, you may still enjoy the people there, but they may have some blind spots that you're moving on past. And this is a process of exploration that everything in our culture is designed to expunge except the internet, which is why the great ones would like to expunge the freedom of the internet. What would you gentlemen say about that?
I think that it was Buckminster Fuller, one of the greatest thinkers of the 20th century, who passed on just before the World Wide Web was really getting building up, who said in one of his last discussions with some of his students, he said, the secret government will become impossible with the new communications technologies. And that's certainly always been my hope. And we're certainly seeing it, but we're also seeing those very elements controlling the most popular memes. Now, Doug, you said before you're active on, and you mentioned Scene, SEEN.is, an
Yeah.
alternative to Facebook. Tell us a little more about that, because we've been wanting to get involved in that, and I've got an account, and it never seemed to be taking off. Is it beginning to take off, and what can we do to help it take off?
I think it's beginning to take off. I stayed away from it for a while until one of the radio shows I listened to, you guys are probably familiar with Dave Hodges.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, he uses it and he recommends it to everybody instead of using Facebook. I use Facebook too because I figure I'm already on the red list.
Right.
So I'm not too worried about it. But yeah, he started promoting it quite a bit. So I got on there and then found his show group and then started friending people. And I think it's a good alternate to Facebook or an addendum to Facebook. I use both. So when I do a post on Facebook, I also parallel it on Scene as well. I do one and then the other. Yeah. And part of that reason is in case my Facebook account ever disappears, I'll have a record there too.
Oh, yeah.
Nice
That's
idea. There are some programs that automatically post to Facebook and Twitter for you. Do they also automatically post to Scene, or is not yet integrated?
There isn't any that I know of, but that doesn't mean they don't exist. There might be, but it's interesting because Scene is laid out almost identical to Facebook. So if you've ever used Facebook before, you already know how to use Scene. So I would recommend people use that, especially if you really dislike Facebook, don't trust it, which you shouldn't anyway. If you have some reason to stay away from it, then I would definitely follow up with scene.life or scene.is. And IS is the top-level domain for Iceland because Scene is based in Iceland.
And they have the most robust and least compromised internet intellectual freedom in the world.
Yeah.
Right. That's like people.
Mm-hmm. I love Facebook, and I'll tell you why. It is, it was created by the very powers that would like to control us and to penetrate us and to surveil us in every moment of our lives. And it was brilliantly created. And therefore, it's a very interesting platform to spread our information, as long as they allow us to, and then they'll take us down. And we are frequently attacked and censored and so on. But it is for reasons that have to do probably more with fluoride than rational thought. It is a trusted, valued platform. And therefore, I think it behooves us to tell our truth on that valued platform because it makes our truth seem more valuable.
Got
Yeah,
it.
agreed.
Hmm.
Agreed.
So we have to engage the enemy on its home territory. What would General Burt say about that?
No, I disagree with that. I think they are engaging us on our home territory.
Because we're speaking truth and they are trying to obscure it.
Well, they are invading, asking permission to invade our homes, our thoughts, our privacy, our circles of connection, and that is our home territory. So as they've built this platform for us, I say, by God, we use it. We capture it. But it's not their territory. As far as they're concerned, we are their territory. We are their vassals to do with as they can get away with.
Yeah. Have you seen the picture of Mark Zuckerberg walking down the? It looks like I don't know, maybe a small amphitheater or a theater of some sort. He's walking down an aisle, and he's just smiling, and he's got his little white trendy T-shirt on, and everyone in the crowd, everyone has on goggles. So they're doing some sort of Facebook, either 3D or virtual world sort of presentation. And he's just walking down this aisle with a big grin on his face. That's what he wants for all of us.
Ooh, oh, that is scary.
Mind-controlled zombies.
Yeah, mind-controlled zombies. I have not seen that picture.
And again, Dr. Rima, they telegraph the plan. American media is filled with zombies all the time. They're getting us ready for the zombification of the population, just as they're making autism the new normal, if you will.
Yep. I would strongly suggest that everybody who hears this podcast, everybody who is listening to the archives, goes to the internet and reads the first few chapters of Brave New World by Aldous Huxley. It's there. It's free. It's on Huxley.net. And I really, really suggest you read just the first 3 or 4 chapters. And then think about the choices you're making and the truth that you choose to tell or not tell.
Didn't Huxley write a book about a half a century after that where he sort of brought people up to date as to what was happening and how close we were to that? Yeah.
Well, we're there.
We're there. Yep.
With the exception of the fact that we still have some wild procreation. There still are some mothers and fathers, the two biggest obscenities that the folks in Brave New World knew.
Right.
Still some of that.
But less and less. As you've pointed out, the cause of the decline in teenage pregnancies is not that teenagers are being any more careful or less promiscuous, but rather that fertility is crashing.
Exactly. Exactly.
And soon only those who are authorized will be able to bear.
Doug, what do you tell your children, and what do you think when you look at your children? You have 2 children, and you know a lot about what's happening in this world. What do you think about, and what do you tell them?
Well, I'm afraid for their future, obviously. We all should be afraid for our kids' futures. I don't keep anything from them or hide things from them. If they have questions, they ask, but we often talk while driving and not being run into by pickup trucks. We often do talk about what's going on in the world. They know when they see chemtrails, geoengineering lines in the sky, they know what it is. And my daughter pointed out not too long ago on a really heavy spray day morning as we were going to school one morning, she pointed out that there was this little patch of blue in the sky. And she said, "Dad, look, they missed a spot."
Oh, wow.
So she knew, she knew that somehow it wasn't quite right from that perspective, but she knows it's evil doing it, not good guys. And I try and point out to my kids whenever something is glaringly obvious that I need to talk to them about, whether it's vaccines or using a cell phone or Wi-Fi or whatever, I point out to them so they're instructed early on and know what they're dealing with. And even though they're not really capable of making that choice now, they will be in the future, whether or not they have a vaccine or use a cell phone or whatever. There's going to be consequences to it.
I am presuming that your children are unvaccinated.
You know, that is probably one of my life's biggest regrets, because I did not know when it was time for vaccines. I did not know how dangerous they were. I was asleep, walking around zombified like everyone else. And I didn't know how dangerous they were, how toxic they are. And I have told them now, we will do everything we can. They go to a private school. We'll do everything we can. We're not going to get any more vaccines. My 8-year-old has only had a few up to now, but it's still way more than she should have had. She should have had 0.
Yes.
Right.
But
That.
my son's had them all the way through. And, you know, like I said, that's literally one of my biggest problems with my own life that I can look back on and say, man, I really messed that one up, because I didn't protect them when I could have. And I wish I would have known more information. And I would just tell parents out there, do your research on vaccines. They don't work. It's a total fraud.
Total fraud. Worse than a fraud. A fraud would be kind of neutral.
Yeah.
It is an assault on the immune system, on the brain, on the endocrine system, on the reproductive capacity. It's a total assault.
They are, as our courts have said, unavoidably unsafe.
Unavoidably unsafe. And although the Minister of Health, I believe, of Victoria, but it may have been New South Wales, said vaccines have absolutely no dangers associated with them.
Well, that's a pronouncement of authority, so it must be true.
Must be true. Unavoidably unsafe. My son is 42, and he'll be 43 he'll be 42 in October. And in 1974, when he was little, 1976, when he was little, I was frantically racing around searching for a smallpox vaccine for him, because we were going to be traveling, and I wanted to protect him. And the smallpox vaccine had been eliminated, I believe, in 1972. And I was frantic, because at that time, not being able to fill in a yellow vaccine card for him seemed like a desperate failure in my ability to protect him. Now, I see things just a little bit differently.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Just a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
My 27-year-old son had a couple of vaccines in the beginning until we realized what was happening, and then we stopped them, and always claimed, of course, as we do, a religious exemption. And that religious exemption was written into the laws back when the vaccine mandates were created as part of the public school system. Those exemptions were written into the law, and as we've now seen, an exemption that is written into a law can be written out of a law. And so in the state of California, the legislature, led by the crony corporate corrupt legislature. Let us never mention the name of the California legislature without the 3 C's: crony corporate corrupt, led by Dr. Pan and his millions of dollars. Yes.
Wait. Criminal.
4 C's. All right. And led by Dr. Pan, who received millions from Big Pharma. And of course, the law was signed into a statute by none other than the governor who, in his first term in office a few decades ago, was known as Governor Moonbeam. Now he's known as Governor Jerry Brownshirt, because he's taken the velvet glove off the iron fist. And not only will Californian kids have to have vaccines in order to have their constitutional guarantee of a so-called free public education. You choose between your right to informed consent and your right to a public education. But adults working in childcare are going to have vaccines too if they want to keep their jobs. Oh, and the owners of the childcare companies can go to jail if they employ people who are not fully vaccinated. That's in the state of California, only beaten by the draconian laws of Australia, where people are being denied more and more access, not just to public benefits, but even to their private jobs. They're talking about people being not allowed to keep their jobs if they're not fully vaccinated. Everyone will be mandated with this unavoidably unsafe and uninsurable medical intervention in violation of the international law of informed consent, a law that no state legislature and no national legislature has any authority to change. So these people are engaging in aiding and abetting a crime against humanity, quite literally defined as such at the end of World War II. There is no statute of limitations on this behavior, and these individuals who are engaged in this behavior should be warned, as they warn us, as they warned you, Doug. It's time for us to warn them that they will be held accountable, just like the Nazi doctors who created the law of informed consent by their barbarism and made it one of the war achievements, one of the achievements of World War II. Wars create law in a very strange way, and the Nuremberg Code is something that is now part of the customary international law, binding on all politicians. Doesn't matter, what party they belong to. They have no protection that they were just following orders, that they were following democratic procedures and pushing their votes through. None of that is an excuse when it comes to aiding and abetting a crime against humanity. And that's what will be seen. It will be as disreputable to have been a vaxxer as it is now to have been a tobacco salesperson.
I was on a radio show in Australia earlier today, Fair Dinkum Radio, with Leon Pitchard. Wonderful man, wonderful show. And he said to me that he wanted to talk about the movie Vaxxed that was directed by Dr. Andrew Wakefield and produced by Del Bigtree, and looks at the malfeasance, the ordered, instructed, hierarchically sanctioned malfeasance of Dr. Walter W. Thompson of the CDC. And he asked me about the movie, and I said, well, I have not had the opportunity to see it, but I've read the documents, and I've read the testimony and heard the story that Dr. Thompson, who still works as a senior scientist for the CDC, has brought forward. And I know that Representative Posey of Florida has over 100,000 documents validating the story that Dr. Thompson, who is now recanting his story, told. And I said, on the basis of that, I don't think I want to see the movie Vaxxed, but I've seen the science killed. I've seen the consequences of the fact that children who are vaccinated before the age of 36 months with the MMR vaccine can't detoxify it because the system of detoxification called the cytochrome P450 system is not mature until about 36 months. And if you're a black baby, your chances of developing autism are at least 700% higher. So that we're talking about ethnic cleansing, perhaps. We're talking about something very, very evil. And I said, yeah, I would love to see the movie, but we have the facts. We don't need to see vaxxed to be convinced of the facts. So what are we doing about it? What are we doing about it? Well, you're spreading truth, Doug. We're spreading truth. Everyone needs an advanced vaccine directive card to assert their right to informed consent, to say, don't you dare vaccinate me or my child or my wife or my mother or brother or father. Don't you dare. Because without that, they will dare. They will dare to spray the sky. They will dare to try to annihilate those of us who tell truth, like the 40 doctors who discovered that Nalgalase was being introduced via vaccines. It's up to us to say, don't you dare.
And Nalgalase, of course, makes it impossible for the body to overcome cancerous conditions that are developing, as I understand it, Dr. Rima.
Nalgalase makes it impossible for the body to overcome autism, to overcome cancer. It turns off the human immune system or the mammalian immune system. It clears the decks for cancer or autism or about 81 other chronic degenerative diseases. Have you noticed that people around you are sick?
Yep.
Have you noticed that people around you have chronic degenerative autoimmune diseases? Have you noticed that people around you who are vaccinated are sick? Well, if everyone's vaccinated, you can't tell that the cause is vaccination. But
Indeed.
among those people, that's why it's so important.
A third of the people are obese, and they're not. That's part of this. That's the food system we have. And by the way, folks, I put up on the screen for those who are watching the live stream or the archive, the link to get the Advanced Vaccine Directive, which is one of the drrimatruthreports.com/Advanced Vaccine Directive. It's right there, as well as an image of the little cards, just like the card that says I am a diabetic, or the card that says I am allergic to penicillin, or the card that says I do not accept transfusions. This card says I refuse all vaccines. It says, doctor, if you stick the needle in my body, I'm going to have the right to sue you for it. Whether or not I'm injured by the needle, by the way, the law is clear about informed consent. From at least 1914 in the United States, the leading case, Judge Cardozo's case, it's a trespass, it's an assault, it's malpractice to engage in a medical intervention without informed consent. If I say to you, I refuse to consent, you may not use the needle. 100 years later, in 2013, the Supreme Court said in Missouri versus McNeely, we have never retreated from our position that you have a privacy interest. By that, they mean right, a right in keeping a government agent from piercing the skin. Anyone who wants to pierce your skin because of a vaccine mandate ordered by the government is a government agent acting under color of law. And they are liable under the Civil Rights Act of Section 1865, by the way, for conspiracy to harm you under color of law, in addition to the malpractice and the assault. So people need to, in the healthcare system, need to understand they're not being protected. They think they're being protected, but they're not, and they will be held accountable unless they stop.
Now,
Dr. Thompson especially should be aware of this because he came clean. He was the co-conspirator who confessed. Under our law, the first co-conspirator who tells the truth exonerates him or herself. And he did that, and now he's backtracking. Interesting.
Well, apparently there was a significantly large emolument for him to backtrack. Now, he kept his job for 10 years before coming clean. I can't live with what I've done anymore. And then 2 years later, with no congressional hearing being held, even though Representative Posey has the data and has been begging Congress for a congressional hearing, I guess they thumbscrewed him with money or I don't know what it was. And he said, who, me? Whistleblower?
Yeah.
Even though I've been granted official whistleblower status by Obama on February 28th. Huh? Whistleblower? Anybody here see a whistleblower? No, sir.
And by the way, we're not exactly sure that he's really going to recant. He's in the middle of, negotiating, no doubt. And folks, understand the amount of money involved in the vaccine situation is obscene. For example, Dr. Offit the Prophet, uh, who voted for one of his own vaccines on the CDC committee, oh, he disclosed that he had a personal interest, made, what was it, 40 million, 80 million? Who knows? Something equivalent to what the psychologist who ran the torture program for the government was paid in his contract, some $60 million. So there's a lot of money that the federal government is willing to pay to corrupt people. And that corruption, which is endemic to the system, is again not exonerated by their positions. Just like the Soviet psychiatrists presumably never believed that they were going to be held to account, but have been, just like the Nazi doctors, who actually, some of whom got hung for what they did, never expected to be held to account. The people who are running the so-called healthcare system in the U.S., and I'd love to read to you some of what Gary Null says in the article we published earlier on this issue. I would love to show that to you if I remember where I put it. Yeah, here we go. I believe I can put this back up on the screen. We have that. We only have a couple of minutes left. I don't want to interfere with that too much, but Gary's article is very interesting in what he told us, and I just got to scroll down to it. He says, American science and public health is the finest in the world, with the smartest people working with the latest technologies to prevent and cure disease. We are exceptional. Quote, end quote. What does Gary say? He says, that is the common belief held by several million people working within the medical industrial complex. Working within the medical industrial complex. The problem is, it's untrue. In fact, it's just the opposite. American medicine kills more people unnecessarily than any other national medical system in the industrialized world. And then he goes on and he proves that. And that article is published on our sister website, inhere, inhere.org. You need to read it. Dr. Rima, we have 7 minutes. Doug,
tell us what we haven't focused on yet that we should.
Well, a good thing about movies like Vaxxed, and I haven't seen it either, but I don't feel like I need to see it because I understand that vaccines are not only a total fraud, total scam, but a death blow. At least it will help, hopefully, open the eyes of people who have, until now, had their eyes closed because they don't want to face the actual reality that we live in. They want to believe that vaccines work and that they're safe and effective when they're neither. And so Vaxxed and movies like that, you can equate it to, the 9/11 issue. Architects and Engineers, they had a really good movie called Explosive Evidence. I think it's available on YouTube, or at least the trailers. You can look at that and glean even more truth and more information. And you have to be able to discern the truth from the fiction. And the fiction is what's coming at us all the time from the media and from the government. That's the fiction. And pretty much in almost every situation, Richard has a thing that he refers to as the government approval program, which is basically do the opposite of what the government says, and you're pretty much going to get it right. I think that's pretty accurate, on just about any issue. So as they say, the truth is out there. So you just have to be able to discern the truth when you hear it.
Excellent.
That statement, you just have to be able to discern the truth, is very, very important. We say around here at Natural Solutions Foundation, the truth rings like a bell in your heart. People know the truth when they hear it. They have to listen for that bell. That deep resonance that says, I have to pay attention to that. Wow, I don't like it. I don't want to believe it. Oh my God, I hope it's not true. But it's ringing in my consciousness. I have to follow that. And that is precisely what Common Core and other modern educational programs are designed specifically to extinguish, as is fluoride, because fluoride, among other things, causes calcification of the pineal gland. Without the pineal gland functioning fluidly and well, you have no moral compass available to you. Think about that.
You just do as you're told. And of course, when 1 out of every 2 births is on the autism spectrum, as we are rapidly heading to, we'll have a population of people who are literally incapable of rebelling from birth. The geoengineering, the genetically modified organism known as humanity, is being developed, and we are the last generation of real humans that will live unless we do something about it.
Unless
and that, I
we
think,
do
is
something
the
about it.
lesson here. I mean, literally, our species is being taken from us by an elite that would rather have ignorant peasants than competent adult humans that might threaten their
Absolutely.
power.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Doug, you're with us. You're telling truth. You were unafraid, or if you were afraid, you transcended that fear after a warning and a whipping.
Mhm.
Tell us how you do that.
Well, I would just like to add to the last
Doug?
kids
Oh,
is
you're
not only
being
don't
broken
take a
up.
vaccine, but don't take a chip.
Don't take a vaccine,
Yeah.
don't take a chip. Right.
Don't take a chip. Transhumanism is, like you guys were just saying, that's the next step in this process of getting rid of humanity. And transhumanism, from however you want to look at it, it's not going to be good for us.
Trans-subhumanism.
Yeah, exactly.
Trans-subhumanism. You know, it's
Right.
meant to subtract from us, not
Yep.
add to us. And that's something we have to really be aware of and discern.
Yeah, and we need to warn our kids about it because they're going to deal with it too at some point, depending on their ages and stuff like that.
It's going to be
But,
very attractive, I promise you. It's going to be
Yeah,
virtual
I'm sure.
reality times 10. It's going to be everything you need it. All you baby boomers, you'll have your concierge in your head telling you what to do next, and you won't have to think.
Yep. That's how they'll sell it to us.
Oh, yeah.
Most of the baby boomers will be dead.
That too. That too. You know, and that, of course, is something that we've exposed, folks. General Burt has written some extraordinarily important blog entries and a book on the great culling. You need to go to drrimatruthreports.com and go to the blog section and look that stuff up. You need General Burt's ebook. Very powerful. There are a series of powerful ebooks coming out. The Zika ebook we mentioned earlier. There's an ebook on addressing autism. There's another ebook from Burt about peak experiences. A lot of important things happening over the next number of months. You got to stay in tune with the Dr. Rima Truth Reports if you're going to catch it. You got to catch that wave as it happens. And
So
Dr. Rima, take us out.
the
Last
most
30
important
seconds.
the most important thing you can do is put your email in at drrimatruthreports.com. Doug, this has been wonderful. First of all, we're thrilled that you are well and whole and becoming completely healthy. And second of all, we are very appreciative that you've been willing to share your story and inspire others to be unafraid and to tell truth. Thank you so much, Doug Diamond.
Well, thank you, Dr. Rima, and thank you, Ralph, for having me on the show. I really enjoyed it.
Back live streaming next Wednesday, 6 to 8 p.m. East Coast time. Thank you, folks.